Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news, plus it's debate show Friday night, which I'm looking forward to. We're going to be talking about whether Donny van de Beek flop or not. Is Donny van de Beek a flop or not? We'll be talking about that on the show tonight. Also the latest on the transfer situation and Ralf Rangnick facing some big decisions, not only over the next month but also over the next week when the players come back from their week off. Big decisions about Rangnick, some of which may well have been inflicted on him. The lack of a midfielder, some players that are not happy that have been forced to stay at the club. They're big issues to deal with. So lots to get into. And we're going to start the show with quite an interesting way of framing this show. But first of all, let me just say, if you didn't realise, Ultimate Fan, we do, when we're doing previews, we have them sponsor our shows. Normally they have a prize pool of about £8,500. You get packs to open for free where you get players that you can pick for the weekends. They score points. This is how you win the prizes. You must be over 18 to play. Links in the video description if you want to download it. But there isn't a game this week because there's no games. So they're not doing it for the internationals or anything like that. So there's no games this weekend. So there's no Ultimate Fan. But you can download it and get prepped for next week. Get your packs ready and get prepared. So links in the video description. Like I say, you must be over 18. But no games this week. But there will be next week. 8,500 cash prize pool. Terms and conditions. Must be over 18. Link in the video description. Free to play. Give it a go. Okay, so let's fly into the show. And I'm going to... look, it's Friday night, so we do have a bit of a Q&A. It's a bit of a more relaxed... Well, it's not more relaxed show. It's a bit... It can be a bit more tasty on a Friday night. We get some opinions, but it is more of a Q&A show. Big up United Stand. Yeah, FC. Great FA Cup win. But look, let's go into this. So let me frame this. Let me just tell you, first of all, in relation to transfer news, if you want the latest on that, basically watch the show from this afternoon because there's not a lot changed in relation to Kamara, Lingard, Donny. Romano gave a bit of an update on Donny, which I'll give you in a moment. But in relation to Lingard, they reckon that could go to the last hour. If it's going to happen, it still could happen. With Kamara, nothing's developing. And then with Donny, Romano has said more conversations have taken place today between Palace and Van de Beek. And that, it is expected that it will happen. My feeling is, and if I get proved wrong, I'll be very happy. But my feeling is that United are dragging these Lingard and Van de Beek deals out till Monday on purpose, so that there's no time for fans to be demanding a signing, and they'll just take Monday to loan these players out, and then go, oh, that's what we did, even though these are players that desperately want out. So Donny is definitely expected to leave. But let me frame this, flop or not. Maybe it'll be a show that we can do quite I don't want it to be a regular feature, but we can call it that when we're discussing it. Let me frame it for you, because I was going to talk about it anyway, and then I saw a very good tweet from Jan Arge Fjortoft. You might not agree with it, I don't think I do, but it just feeds into what I want to talk about Van de Beek. So basically he quote tweeted a Guardian article saying the mystery of Donny van de Beek, Manchester United's player, and he quoted it and said, could it be that Van de Beek just isn't good enough? People say he hasn't had chances. Could it be that he has not got enough chances because he's not good enough? And none of the Man United managers have picked him regularly because he's not good enough. So, and I don't think some people would disagree with Jan on that one. That, people say he's not had chances. Maybe it's because he's not good enough. More than one Manchester United manager hasn't picked him. Is that because he's not good enough? And I certainly read the chats when we're live, and I think there will be people in the chat who totally agree with that. So let's just spend a few minutes before we get into your questions, and I want to talk about Rangnick's big decisions, and then we'll get into your questions. But is Donny van de Beek a flop? Now, is Anthony Martial a flop? Because if Anthony Martial's a flop, Donny is definitely a flop. Because Anthony Martial, whatever you think about it, I mean, I saw some stats from the season before last. Goals and assists in the amount of games he played, he was fantastic. His first season at the club, he was fantastic. So, is Martial a flop? I mean, he's probably not hit the consistent heights that we wanted to, but to call somebody a flop when they actually did deliver for a couple of seasons is difficult. And if Martial's a flop, then Donny's a flop, isn't he? So I don't think Martial is a flop. But back to Donny, you could argue Fred's a flop. 50 million quid. What's Fred done? Really, for 50 million quid, he's done okay. But if he'd cost 20 million, I think I'd go, yeah, he's done okay. Did Dan James flop at 15 million pounds? He did okay. He was very cheap. So does he flop? I think I think price has to go next to expectation and what somebody delivers. Is Donny van de Beek a flop? Well, let me just answer those points that Jan said. So Jan said, people say he's not been given enough chances, but maybe he's not been given enough chances because he's not good enough. That is a good point. I believe it's a good point. Maybe he's not good enough to be given chances. Okay. To which I would say this. If you think Donny van de Beek's not good enough and that's why he's not been given chances, that's absolutely fine if your midfield three consists of De Bruyne, Gundogan and Rodri. Because they play well every week. And he mustn't be good enough then. If he doesn't get game time, he mustn't be good enough. And that would be very easy for United fans to understand. If he was leaving, if we had Rodri, Gundogan and De Bruyne as our midfield three, and after 2 years, Donny's hardly played at all, and he's off to Palace, you'd just go, it's a shame, but he's just clearly not good enough. So I think Jan's on the right track. But where it falls apart is that we have seen, especially this season, Matic, McTominay and Fred, and mainly McTominay and Fred because Matic hasn't played that much, play badly. And I know there's been good performances. I know Fred and McTominay on the opening day against Leeds played well. And I know that Fred played well against Palace. And I know that McTominay played well in the second half against Brentford and in the entire game against Burnley. But how many other games have they played where we can't say that? How many games have they played badly? And that is where the theory that Van de Beek hasn't been given chances because he's not good enough, it just falls apart and disintegrates. Because we haven't got Rodri, Gundogan and De Bruyne. We've got McFred and Matic, and they haven't played well for most of the season. So it doesn't wash with me to say, well, he's not good enough. That's why he doesn't get game time. Because I've seen some horrific midfield performances this season from Matic, McTominay and Fred. So, so bad that I think, a Preston North End midfielder should be given a chance. So you're telling me, a Champions League semi-finalist, one of the best midfielders up and coming in Europe 2 years ago, can't be given a chance ahead of Fred and McTominay when they're playing as bad as they have done at times this season. It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. And then it doesn't make any more sense when he comes on against Watford and he's the best player on the pitch and then doesn't get a chance again. Or at the end of last season, he plays next to Matic and dominates the midfield. Like I know there are isolated incidents when he's played well, but it's isolated incidents when he plays. It just doesn't make any sense. And look, I'll never expose people who tell me information close to the team, but it's well established anyway that a lot of players don't understand why Van de Beek's not been given more opportunities. And what generally, when I've spoken to people about this, they said it's different under Rangnick. The reason under Rangnick is different to the reason it was under Ollie. The reason under Ollie that Donny didn't get game time is because Ollie had his favourites. He never dropped Bruno. He never dropped Rashford. He never wanted to drop McTominay and Fred. He put Pogba on the bloody wing to put McTominay and Fred in the midfield. He was obsessed with them. So there was never really an opportunity for Donny to play because he would always play Pogba, Bruno and McTominay and Fred ahead of Donny. So there was nowhere for him to play anyway. Under Rangnick, it's more confusing. So on the second point that Fjortov says, I think we can answer the whole he's not good enough to get a chance because, come on, the crap that's been playing this season and he's not been given a chance, that doesn't make sense. And on the second point, 2 managers haven't picked him. Well, that's like saying, I want to marry 2 separate women, not at the same time. And they both say no to me. They don't say no for the same reason, unless they're twins. And even then they'll have different reasons. So Ollie wasn't picking Donny because of favouritism. I don't know why Rangnick's not picking him. I don't. I actually don't. And that's the one that puzzles me the most and probably worries me the most. I don't trust Ollie when it comes to development because Ollie didn't pick Delot. And we've seen that Delot's our best right-back over the last month. So do you want me to trust... you can't use that. You can't say, well, he must be crap because 2 managers didn't pick him. You can't compare Ollie to Rangnick. That's comparing an Astra to a bloody Ferrari. Like they're very different managers. So under Ollie, I can justify it on incompetence basically because he didn't pick Delot, he didn't pick Tellez, he wouldn't pick Donny. There's other players he just wouldn't pick. Sancho at the start. So logically Ollie made no sense. But Rangnick not giving Van de Beek any game time, I've never really understood that one, and I can't understand it. So I'd be interested to read some of your comments. If Jan's tweet about Donny is true, he must have 2 left feet and eyesight worse than Stevie Wonder's to be that much worse than McFred, says Joshua Bowerwater. And I think Rangnick not playing Donny is because the board have told him not to, since it would heavily undermine them because they didn't do anything when Ollie would not play him. They supported Ollie 100%. I don't know, Pandy, because, you know, he's picked the low and that undermines the previous manager. So, you know, I don't know. I think what needs to happen, and I am quite relaxed about this, I think what needs to happen, and let me answer the question. Do you think Donny is a flop? Yes or no, and why? Because I want to read some of your chats before we move on. Do I think Donny's a flop at Manchester United? Yes. And that might shock you, but yes, I do. I don't think it's his fault, but I think United have... The reason I'm going to say yes is because if... I can't say he's not a flop and then say that they've destroyed his career for the last 2 years. I think he is a flop at Manchester United, but I think he's a flop at United because of the way they've treated him. He's lost his international place. He's hardly played any football. He was considered one of the best up-and-coming midfielders in Europe, and now he's not even one of the best up-and-coming midfielders in his bloody street. You know, we've destroyed him over 2 years. So I think he is a flop, yes, but I don't think it's of his making. I think what really disappoints me is that when you buy a player, especially when you spend £40 million on a player, you must give them a run of at least 5 games in a row. Tell me how many games Donny van der Beek has played in a row. And certainly how many games has he played in a row in the last 12 months. I think the only time I remember him playing a few games in a row was probably November 2000 and... I don't even remember it. Was it 2020? Yeah. And I think Pogba and McTominay were injured, and I think he played a few games with Fred, but I can't remember how many games he played in a row. So I think that, you know, when you buy a player, you must give them a few games in a row. I remember Van Gaal with Januzaj. He started him 3 or 4 games in a row, and it was clear he wasn't good enough, but at least you knew that. Like, Donny van der Beek's never been given a run in the team, so it's not his fault. I don't think it's his fault at all. I think the club have turned him into a flop, and it reflects badly on the club. It can turn around, and I think the best situation is that he gets out to Palace and he plays, and we see what he's all about. I can't tell you the amount of people that are excited by the prospect of Donny van der Beek playing Premier League football, and they don't really care where it is. You know, I've had people message me saying, I don't care if he goes to Newcastle, Everton, Palace, Leicester. If he's going to play first team football, I'm going to watch him. And it's not because they're going to support Palace, Everton, Leicester or Newcastle. It's because, probably like me and many of you, they're absolutely confused as to how this situation has arisen. How have we spent £40 million on an exciting player and then not utilised him? How has it happened? And why has it happened? And we will only get the answer when we see him play in the Premier League. And look, my eyes are wide open on this. If he goes to Palace and they play him in the first 3 or 4 games and he gets dropped because he's crap, then I'll be the first to say, right, Ollie was right. Rangnick was right. You know, McTominay and Fred are better. I don't think that's going to happen, by the way, but, you know, we'll have to wait and see. With the midfield triangle changing to one holding player, there is no reason for Van der Beek not getting in. Can't be a flop if he hasn't got a run of games. And I do agree with that. Spot on. I do agree with that. I do agree with anybody who says he's not a flop. But I have to be true to what I've said. And what I've always said is that we've destroyed his career over the last 2 years. So I think the club have created him. They've made him into a flop, not himself. And I think that, you know, in a perverse way, it could benefit the club massively, because if he goes and does really well, we'll either sell him and get our money back, or he'll come back and be a valuable player. You know what I'd love to happen, by the way? I'd love this to happen. I would love him to go to Palace, do really, really well. Then we get Ten Hag in the summer, and then he plays for United next season. I'd love it. And then I'd be like, swivel on it. Swivel on it. Hi, Mark. Why do we keep hearing sell or loan to buy? And here we are. The board refused to help Ralph, says Klaus. And Pandy, thank you very much. Welcome to the Members Club. Thank you for supporting the club. Appreciate that. You know what? The saddest thing for me about Donny van der Beek is, and some of you might remember this, it was... When was it? 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago during lockdown. So it was around May. We're in lockdown. And I had Fabrizio Romano on the show. It might have been April or May. and it was in lockdown, and we had Fabrizio and Romano on, and we were talking about signings, and we were coming towards the end of the show, and I was probably filling time a little bit, and I just said to him, you know what, I think Van der Beek could be a fantastic player for Man United. Is there any chance of that happening? And Romano said, you know what, I love Van der Beek, but there's nothing in relation to Manchester United. But yes, I love Van der Beek. And I always remember that, because then 3-4 months later we actually bought him. And I remember mentioning it to Fabrizio and saying, remember that conversation? And he said, yes, maybe you didn't. But I remember it very clearly, and it was just so weird that we both were really big fans of Van der Beek. And it was just a pie in the sky, bit of a filler question towards the end of an interview. And then it actually happened. And I was so excited, and it didn't work out. But you know what? Fabrizio was very excited about Ahmad coming to United, and that's not worked yet, but it still could. There's still time. Anyway, let's get into some of your questions. I live in Amsterdam, and I don't think here anyone would rush to play Donny as a deeper midfielder. When we did well in the Champions League, he basically lived in the box. Yes, and it's going to be very... I personally don't think he's a deep-lying midfielder. I think he's a box-to-box midfielder. And to be honest, Ollie didn't play like that, did he? Evening, Mark. Why can't we use Donny as a number 6, as Mikael Roach? But you know what? Going back on that, I also think Donny van der Beek would be a better 6 than Fred and McTominay, because he's a better footballer. So, have Donny come to Liverpool. I'd like to see Klopp do his magic with him. Yeah, I think Klopp would do as well, Steve. And hi, Mark. Me and my brother were assaulted last night, recovering now. Watching your streams today have really helped. Thanks, mate. It says Ethan Cooper. We're rest up, Ethan. I'm very sad to hear that, and I hope that you and your brother are doing very well. And like I say, sorry to hear that. Biggie Third says a flop deal is different from a player flopping. Yeah, and I think it's a flop deal, Biggie Third. Exactly, it's a flop deal. Let me just keep your questions coming in, because I want to move it. It's Friday night, so let's just do a bit of a Q&A. But I do just want to say as well, as we approach the last few days of this transfer window, it's not gone the way that many people thought it was going to go. Logically, I felt that United would let 2 players go and bring 1 in. And when I say let players go, I expected them to be loan deals. So Martial's 1, Ahmad's 2. I think we could do up to 4. If Lingard and Donny go, we could see 4 players going. All of which are players that differing views would say should have been given more first team opportunities, even Ahmad. And I'd expect 1 to come the other way, logically. As things stand, that's what Ralph Rangnick expected as well. He expected a midfielder to come in and 2 or 3 players to go out. As things stand, doesn't look like anyone's going to come in. And also, it looks like some players are going to be staying. I think it was tonight, Jonathan Schrager on Twitter was saying that it's expected that Eric Bailly is going to stay. Well, that's definitely a player that doesn't want to be here. Dean Henderson is going to stay. That's definitely another player that doesn't want to be here. Jesse Lingard's deal to Newcastle as of now is dead. It can be resurrected, but you've got a deal in the now. It is dead. That's another player who doesn't want to be here. And hopefully the Donny deal will happen, but you never know with United. It could fall apart. So Rangnick's got a really big next few months ahead of him anyway. We know that. We're in a race for top 4. Hopefully we can do well in the Cups. But he's also going to be hindered by players that are unhappy at this football club, because this football club hasn't, again, dealt with issues. Martial's only not here because he took a pay cut. Don't forget that. Lingard is still here because the club decided to get greedy for a few more million out of a player they're getting nothing for in a few months. Idiocy. Van der Beek is still here because United are arguing that they want all the wages. I cannot overemphasise enough how absolutely useless our negotiators are when it comes to the fact that these players don't want to be here, and if they stay here, they're depreciating in value by the minute. Palace will get Donny, but United want them to pay all of their wages. Even though Palace are really doing us a favour. We're not using Donny van der Beek, and you want them to pay all of the wages. Martial, Sevilla couldn't afford the wages because we stupidly gave him £250,000 a week, so he's had to take a pay cut. United have absolutely screwed this all up, and Rangnick is going to end up with some players that don't want to be here. And as we know, when you've got players that aren't unhappy, you get dressing room leaks. And if we get a couple of bad results, we're going to be back where we were 3 weeks ago with this dressing room unrest. So just bear it in mind that Rangnick does face some big decisions and big issues potentially inflicted on him by this board. One, for not giving him a midfielder, but two, for not actually clearing the decks of players that don't want to be here and leaving him with them. So what does Rangnick do next week against Borough? Does he start Jesse Lingard if he's still here? What's the point in that? Does he start Dean Henderson? What's the point in that? You know, there are going to be issues that he's going to have to deal with because this football club is incapable of making efficient, correct decisions. And if I was in charge of Manchester United, if I was the CEO, the one thing I would have done in this January was give Ralph Rangnick the midfielder. I would have given him Zakaria or Kamara. I said, which one do you want? I'll get it for you because it's not going to cost me a lot of money anyway. Right, that's sorted. Right, which players don't you want to be here? Okay, so Martial, Donny, Lingard, Henderson, Beek and Ahmad. Okay, I'm going to get them all. I'll get rid of them all. There's loads of clubs who want them. I'll get rid of... You sure? All of them? Okay, I'll get rid of all of them. We'll take a hit on some of them, but we'll get that money back in the summer if they go and do well anyway. It's fine. Let's get them out of the way. Let's make them happy, which makes our squad happy because we haven't got people who are unhappy here. You've got a big 4 months ahead of you, Ralph. Then you're going to come upstairs and work with me. So we'll get you the midfielder. We'll get rid of these people. Let's focus on the next 4 months. That's for a good end to the season, and then let's go into the summer with some positivity, yeah? High five, man. Let's go. Okay, I'll see you next week. Why can't we be like that? Everything at United has to be dealt with in, how much money can we get? How much can we get enough money? Are we being conned? You know this goes on. You know it does. You know we don't have decisive football people in that football club. And the reality is, if we did have decisive football people in that football club, we'd make more money anyway. We would. I would be, as CEO or negotiator, I would be saying to the negotiator, right, how much do Palace want to give us for Donny van der Beek? Well, they're willing to give us a couple of million for the loan and they will pay 70% of his wages. Okay, all right. So if he doesn't go, we're paying 100% of his wages and we're not getting the 2 million. And also, if he goes and does well, or even if he does okay, somebody will want to buy him in the summer. So yeah, send him off. Paying 30% of his wages and his value going up is better than us paying 100% and it going down. Let's do it. That is so logical. So logical, isn't it? I agree with you, Mark. Unfortunately, he is a flop, but not by his own doing. He hasn't had a fair chance by any stretch of the imagination, says KMWT. I just think that, it's not rocket science, and I'm sure many of you would agree that if you run your football club like a football club, you make very different decisions to a football club that's run like a business. And, I'm not making any breaking news statements here. We are absolutely in a situation whereby everything we do is driven by how much money we can make out of it. And the Ronaldo deal is a prime example. I and you wanted Ronaldo to come back because he's one of the greatest players that's ever played the game, and he used to play for us, and he's a legend. That's why we wanted him. And this is where money and football can cross, because we're pumped because Ronaldo's coming back from a footballing point of view, and they're like, shit, look at the shirt sales, look at the branding, look at this, that, look at the increase we're going to get. Look at when he scores a goal and we can do a clip from behind the goal. Oh, yes, get him in. The money's going to roll in. And sometimes it can cross, but most of the time it doesn't cross. And that is why they look incompetent a lot of the time and frustrate the hell out of people who are football people, because we just don't think about what makes the manager's job easier, what makes the fans' life more enjoyable, what makes us more likely to be successful on the football pitch. It doesn't go hand in hand with what makes you successful on the Excel spreadsheet. If we get Martial, Donny van der Beek, Lingard and Ahmad on loan, we're left with Mata, Matic on the bench and Co on the bench. It's like a retirement home, says Andy Cheetham. Or we promote some youth. Would you bring in a young up-and-coming manager like Ruben Amorim at Sporting Lisbon, or do you prefer a more established manager like Pochettino? It's Achilles. I mean, I would put Ten Hag in the up-and-coming position because, yes, he's done well in the Champions League, but he's still managing in the Netherlands. So the reason I don't like Pochettino, welcome to the Members Club, Remy. The reason I don't like Pochettino is that I feel that he's yesterday's news in a sense that I still think he's a good coach. Get your questions in, by the way. We're into the question section now. I do believe he's a good coach, but he's managed Spurs and got the sack. We all know about Pochettino, and I just think he's a bit yesterday's news. This is a manager we should have got after after Mourinho, not now. If Pochettino came in and did okay and then flopped, it wouldn't surprise me. I think we need to create our own. What I want to say is I want to go from success to success. If you go for Ten Hag, he's hit the ceiling at Ajax. He's ready to move up. That's where we should be going. With Pochettino, he got sacked by Spurs. And, at PSG, has he really done that well? He's got Messi, Mbappe and Neymar as his front three. I think I'd manage them to the French National League title. So it shocks me to see a player who can play Champions League football with Ajax signed to then not be picked hardly ever and then called a flop. It's sad, says Lil. And hi Mark, surely we moved on from physical players when we got rid of Mourinho, Fellaini and Lukaku. That can't be a reason for Donny not playing. Well, I spoke about that this afternoon, the Beast, and I think it's bloody ridiculous. To say that a player's not being picked because they're not physical enough is really shocking, that it even has been linked out. So, yeah, absolutely ridiculous in that sense. But look, I love Donny van de Beek as a player. I was so excited when we got him. And you know what? I really, really, really hope that he can prove people wrong, because I think he's good enough to prove people wrong. I do. I think we are a team that really, really should have utilised him more and hasn't. So I hope he can do better. I really do. But in these opportunities, and the first thing he needs when he goes on loan to someone like Palace is to play the first 4 or 5 games. And you know what? Patrick Vieira's obviously seen something there, and Patrick Vieira is one of the best ever Premier League midfielders. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything, does it? It really doesn't. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a very good striker and he wasn't a very good manager. But Patrick Vieira is one of the best Premier League midfielders there've been. Hopefully, he can turn him into that. Ed Woodward says, Goldbridge, stop calling me incompetent. I'm fuming. And Vihan says, I feel like a more experienced manager will be more stringent with their ideas and less likely to be controlled by the board. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. And I don't really care what anybody else thinks, and that's not in a rude way. I think everyone's got their entitlement to have their own thoughts and on how United should be and what gets them excited and what gets them frustrated. But as I said a few days ago, when it comes to the manager, it's not really something that rocks my boat at the moment. I'll talk about it, but I'm not excited about it because I'd rather Pochettino was our manager in the summer and we've got Champions League football than Ten Hag be the manager and we've got Europa League football. And you know what I mean there. I probably would prefer Ten Hag over Pochettino, but what's more important to me is what we do over the next 4 months. And neither of those managers have got any control on whether they're in the Europa League or the Champions League. What has got control is Rangnick and this board right here, right now, in the next few days. So, I would say this, and I would almost whisper it. If Donny goes, that leaves us with McTominay, Fred, Matic, Pogba and Bruno. 5 midfielders for the rest of the season. Matic can't play 90 minutes. Pogba is running his contract down and is a little bit injury prone. And McTominay and Fred, in fairness, for most of the season haven't played that well. But Donny, that's not a reason to keep Donny, because Donny's not been played anyway. But it's definitely a reason to bring a midfielder in. If we go for Ten Hag, I could be the same story like Klopp and Liverpool. Klopp hit the ceiling in Germany and went for something bigger and it worked, says Dominic. I think Donny has a future at United. Just hope he can forgive the club for the way he's been treated. I think Ten Hag could turn him around, says Andy Cheetham. Yeah, I don't... Never say never. Donny might go to Palace, do very well, and then in the summer have a lot of offers and just come back to United and go, I don't care what you offer me, I want out. I've seen what it's like somewhere else. I hate it, how you've treated me. I'm not going to give you an opportunity. He could come back in a nice way and go, look, I really want to be successful here, but I've sat on the bench for 2 years. I've been lied to about chances in the past. I've just gone and played for Palace. I've enjoyed it. I've proved myself. I want to go and play somewhere that they want me. And I think I've got more chance of that if I'm moving as a new signing to a new project. He might do that. On the other hand, he might do really well. The manager might be Ten Hag. And he'll go, Donny, give me a hug. This is a different club now. You're playing for me. And, there are different things. On the other hand, he might go to Palace, be okay, come back and be like, Man United are like, yeah, we're not going to use you, and he'd be like, okay, fine, and he moves on. It's criminal that Nielsen is not getting a proper run out. He's a club legend, says Cesar. Now's not the time for TUSFC. We should start having a TUSFC. Imagine that. 9 o'clock tonight on Twitch. TUSFC stand, where we'll be talking about the form. And I'd love to do it. It'd be a bit weird, but I do agree. I think Nielsen should be getting more game time, and maybe this season he will. He's still a part of the plans. That's all I can say. And I do listen to the fans, unlike some clubs. Any latest news on Neves, Mark, says Alan. What, Ruben Neves? I think he's sat at home watching Netflix. I don't know. Ruben Neves is not going to leave in January, and therefore my interest ends. I saw something tonight about Tchouaméni and Manchester United, but that's for the summer. You've got to expect that as well. Cynic in me says, where's this coming from? When we're getting stories about players like Tchouaméni and Declan Rice, which aren't going to, and Ruben Neves, then they're not going to happen in the next 3 days. They're in the summer signings, and United love this. United love stories that aren't going to happen. How many times over the last 10 years, since Sir Alex Ferguson's retired, have we had a bad result, a really bad result, and then the next day you're waking up and Gareth Bale's coming to United, or Ronaldo's coming to United? Now, I know Ronaldo did come to United, but I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. United love a story about a player that's not really going to happen now, and it's not really going to happen in the future, but people might think it's going to happen because it gives them false hope and it shuts them up. United have over the past few years robbed our players from Euro and World Cup opportunities. It's a short career, that's why they want loans, says Paul, and I agree with them, Paul. That next year will be a challenge for any manager. There's a lot of teams improving while United are treading water, says Cormac. I think Gerrard's done a very good job at Villa. I think he's been backed well. I also think he inherited a good team. And if they keep developing, I think Aston Villa are going to be a real threat next season to us and Spurs and Arsenal. I'm excited to see Pogba under Rangnick. What do we do if he becomes our best player, says Mr. 1972. Look, Paul Pogba's capable of doing that. And I think we will end up talking about Paul Pogba a lot more over the next few weeks as he comes back. Paul Pogba's very capable of proving people wrong, and I think he will do well in February, and United may well do well in February because Pogba does well. If Pogba's doing well and Bruno's doing well and Ronaldo's doing well and Greenwood's doing well and Rashford's doing well, then we're going to be winning games because we've got too many players doing well who can make things happy. So make things happen. What happened with Paul Pogba when that story came out before Leipzig and we got knocked out that he wanted to leave and it was disgusting and this, that and the other? He went on and played really well. So I think Paul Pogba will probably come into the team and play well for 6 weeks, and then I think he might get injured. I don't think Pogba's going to be brilliant for the next 4 months of the season. If he is, we'll coast top 4. We will. I don't expect Pogba to not be anything other than good. I think Pogba is a very good player. But on the other hand, there's always that risk that he isn't good because he's inconsistent or he's got his eye on the summer. So it'd be interesting to see. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get a good Paul Pogba. It's depressing because the Glazers haven't contributed to the success of this club but are contributing to the downfall of the club and players' careers. Players won't want to come to United eventually, says the Connor. Welcome to the members club, Chinello and Kian. Thank you very much for your super chat there. I suppose the interesting thing would be... please smash a like on the video, by the way. I suppose the interesting thing with Pogba would be... where's he going to play in that team? Question mark. I don't know. For me, I would love to see a mid... I think we would all love to see a midfield of a really good holding midfielder, Pogba and Bruno. What we might see is McTominay holding the midfield with Pogba and Bruno, and it might work. It might have to work. We might sometimes see Fred, Pogba and Bruno, but what we can't see is McTominay, Fred and Bruno, or McTominay, Fred and Pogba. You can't rotate Pogba and Bruno. You've got to get them both in that midfield, because the reason we've got to do that is not because I like Pogba and Bruno, which I do. And it's not because I'm scared of Bruno being dropped for Pogba or Pogba being dropped for Bruno. I just think it's bloody ridiculous that Pogba and Bruno would share one role whilst you pick McTominay and Fred. you've got to get them both in the team. And what will change massively, I believe, is that if you can get Pogba and Bruno in the midfield and you can get Sancho on the wing, it won't matter if Rashford's on the other wing or Greenwood's on the other wing, because you've got three creative players in Sancho, Pogba and Bruno. And Ronaldo and Cavani will benefit huge time. So that has to be the goal. The goal has to be to get Pogba, Bruno and Sancho in the team ASAP. And if you can find a way of doing that, then I do believe that we're going to see a very good February, because we've got some very winnable fixtures. Thank you for the super chat there, Mikael Roach. Get your questions in. It's Friday night Q&A. I think Pogba doesn't defend well on purpose, says Paps. Ronaldo, Sancho and Rashford as our front three, with Pogba, Bruno and McTominay backline being Varane, Dalot, Shaw and Maguire, says Rishav. I'm going to do a video next week on what I think is United's best 11. So I'm not going to spoil it, but I think you're not far off. Probably 2 or 3 players I would change. 2. Pogba could play as 9, says Jan. Where do you think Pogba will end up? Well, it's Friday night. I'll answer it. I think I've got no inside knowledge on this. I don't think he'll end up at Manchester United, and I don't think he should end up at Manchester United. Even as a fan of his, I think it's time to part ways. We are desperately in need of a reset. You don't reset with Paul Pogba. He's 29. You don't reset with committing Paul Pogba to this club for the next 4 years. Riola's never going to shut up. He'll be at it again in the next 2 years. Pogba wants to go, which is just disruptive. And at 29, he's not going to get any better. And he's been here 6 years. I do like Pogba. I don't want him to sign a new contract. I think it's time to go. It's time to part ways. What I would really like to see is Paul Pogba finish this season well, and then we part ways amicably. And I think there's 2 places. I think it will be not Juventus. I think it will be PSG or Real Madrid. And if Real Madrid want him, it will be Real Madrid. But I've got a funny feeling he might end up at PSG. The only logical thing I can think of is Donny rubbed someone high up the wrong way, and the manager's been told to not play him, says Carl. Mate, unless that's been really kept as a very good secret, I've never heard anything about that at all, and I just don't. I don't know a reason. You know what? I'm just looking forward to watching Crystal Palace play and see what he's all about. That's the thing that I hope happens the most. Nigel doesn't care where Pogba goes. 1 billion wasted, no major success, says Fergie's son. I think that's a good point as well. I would probably back any of you as CEO for Manchester United, except for Robert McCormack if he's watching. I think he's got some weird ideas. I'm only joking, Robert. But no, look, the way we've spent 100 billion is a whole show in itself, and it's probably one I will do. But off the top of my head, I can just think of deals that I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't, I remember one that really sticks out to me. There's 2 or 3, but there's one that sticks out to me. I wouldn't have bought Wan-Bissaka for 50 million. And look, I don't know whether Wan-Bissaka would ever see this clip, and if he did, I like him. I've always said I like Wan-Bissaka. I didn't like the fee. I felt he was 20 million overvalued, and that 20 million straight away can be used towards something else. Harry Maguire was £30 million overrated, and I was happy when we bought Harry Maguire. And I remember saying, look, at the end of the day, you pay what you pay for, and on paper I can see why we've done it. But I think it's almost like being drunk when you make a signing. All you want to see is the good out of it, and I wouldn't have spent the money we've spent on Matic. What did we spend on Matic? 40 million. I never would have spent that. Di Maria, I wouldn't have spent 60 million on him. Like, there's just been so many signings I wouldn't have made. Fellaini, I wouldn't have done that. Wouldn't have gone near that deal. So look, straight away, I probably wouldn't have spent 300 or 400 million pounds of what Woodward spent. And I just wish we'd had a decent CEO and a decent director of football. What will be excuses when we end up with no European football at all? How far do you feel we have fallen to get Glazers out of big changes made, says Paul. Look, I've got no idea how we do that other than buying them out. And I don't know of anybody or any scheme that's available at the moment that fans can get behind to raise £4 billion and get them out of the club. Ten Hag for me, however, I'm uncertain whether he has... And look, you know, just on that very, very quickly, there are people who are United fans who, you know, maybe don't like the United stand or whatever. I don't care. That's up to them. They don't have to watch it. But I would 100%, if they were putting together a scheme to buy the club, I would get behind it because I know that they're United fans. And they might not like the United stand, but I know that they're United fans. And I would love them to be in charge of our club rather than them. It's not, for me, it's not about, you know, oh, I only want people to run the club who I like. I want people to run the club who love Manchester United and want us to be successful on the pitch. So, you know, that's one thing I've always said about this channel, and we did it with the protests as well. Obviously, there's people who've been quite abusive and horrible to us in the past. But if there was a genuine scheme to get those people in charge of the football club, I'd get behind it because I know they're United fans and I know that they want what's best for the club. So, you know, I just haven't seen or heard of anything that I can say, look, everybody, get behind that, you know, put a tenner in or whatever. Ten Hag for me, however, I'm uncertain whether he has the balls to stand up against the board. What is your take on this? Is someone like Mancini perhaps more ideal with respect to this aspect? He seems more like Conte, says Axel. The board will always be a problem, Axel. I think we're searching for the manager. You're dragging me back in the manager chat again. I think we're searching for a manager that probably doesn't exist in the modern day. You know, even Sir Alex Ferguson, when he came down from Aberdeen, very strong-willed, but, you know, he was reliant on the board because they stood by him. You only become strong with your board when you prove that you're successful. So there's not many people who are going to walk into that United job and be strong and take no shit. Conte would have done, but United didn't want to go anywhere near someone like that, and that's the problem. Even if you find somebody, United won't go near them. They want a puppet. Imagine if we had a midfield of Pogba, Bruno and Rodri. Not currently in our reach, though, at the moment, sadly, says Lil. I mean, imagine a midfield three of Fabinho, Pogba and Bruno. Imagine a midfield three of Jorginho, Pogba and Bruno. They'd all work. They would all work. It's criminal that we haven't bought a CDM. Not just now. Last summer, the summer before. It's criminal we never went and bought a CDM. And you know what pisses me off the most? Fabinho could have come to United a year and a half before Liverpool bought him. He was at Monaco. He had the same bloody agent as Mourinho. We could have bought Fabinho. We were talking about Fabinho 2 years before Liverpool bought him. 2 years before we bought him. Oh. You know, and that, you know what? That goes back to what we were talking about before. The £1 billion we've wasted since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. The amount of shows we've done talking about players that'd be suitable. And, you know, you've got Ed Woodward and co. spending 60 million on bloody Di Maria. 30 million on Schneiderlin, was it? You know. And Fabinho was available from Monaco for next to nothing. But apparently we've got great scouts. Well, either they're not being listened to, which is even worse, or they're not that great. Do you think the board have anything to do with Donny not playing, says Mole? I don't know. And I'm not reading your second name. I'm not that thick. I wonder about all the things that play behind the scenes when making transfers. It's one thing finding targets, but it's another to bring them in, says Juiced. Yeah, and look, in fairness to the scouts, and I know a few ex-United scouts, there has been definitely players that have been suggested to us in the past, and we've been told no. And remember the story about Zakaria. Apparently, Rangnick really likes Zakaria, but the club have said, no, he won't suit Manchester United. I just wonder how bad he is if they don't think he's better than what we've got. As I've said before, Romu at Southampton's better than our holding midfielders. Is Rashford, Greenwood, Sancho our future front three, or will it lack development because of them to reach their full potential, says Callum? I think right now, Callum, that's a great question, and I'd pose it to the chat. Do you think Sancho, Rashford and Greenwood are our front three? If Greenwood's the striker, Rashford's off the left and Sancho's off the right. And I think right here, right now, people would say you're having a joke, you're having a laugh. But you know what? It could work. And really, why shouldn't it work? Rashford as a wide left forward, Greenwood as a striker, and Sancho as the right-sided creative player. Sancho can definitely achieve it. Greenwood can definitely achieve it. And I think Rashford can achieve it. I suppose the reason why I'd probably say no is because none of them are achieving it at the moment. And what's the chances in football, when you look at the last 40 years, that 3 players who aren't hitting those heights at the moment are all going to hit it? We have seen Martial, Greenwood and Rashford work in the past, so it can work, but you know, football's quite predictable as well. You know, when a player starts playing a bit hot and cold for 2 years, it might be because they're a bit hot and cold. Ashley Young, if you remember Ashley Young at United, I remember when we bought him, and I know a few Villa fans, and they were like, he's a really good player. 5 games a season he plays like Messi, and 35 games of the season he's very frustrating. And that's what happened at United. You know, 5 games a season. When he was a winger, as a fullback, he was a bit more consistent because it's defending, isn't it? But as a winger, Ashley Young, 5 games a season, you're like, oh my God, he's unbelievable. And then 35 games, it's like hot and cold. So, you know, sometimes that's what players are like. And it's the top players who can do it week in, week out. Fabinho wouldn't have got developed at United, says Hub. Well, that's probably a very good point, to be fair. Do you think if the previous manager was still in charge, would the board let him buy players this window? Let's say he got the same results as Ralph Mahir. I think they would have bought a player for Ollie because he would have been the permanent manager. I think they're hiding behind this interim bollocks. Mark, be honest, our transfers post-Fergie are crap. Any good ones? Herrera, Bruno, Varane, Cavani and Shaw are to push. Please be realistic about how bad we've been. They've been terrible, Andrew. They've been terrible. Hi, Mark. Great show as per usual, but I'd like to know what your United 5 teams be, past, current and combined. 5A teams? What's a 5A team? 5-a-side team, says Scott. I'll have a go. Elon Musk should buy United, Mark. I'm sure he'll be great for us. You have reach. Please tweet it out. Something, it might happen. You never know. Yeah. You're dreaming, Rick. Could you say hi to John? He loves the show. That was from Mark. Do 2 shows. One on wages, one on transfers, says Nick. I need to just go back to that one if I can. Elon Musk buy United, says V. Would you take Soucek at United? Well, I would, the beast, but he's not really what we need. We need a holding midfielder, and obviously Declan Rice does that for West Ham. Hello to John. I couldn't see who said it, but hello to John. I think his surname was Corboy. No joke, tweet Elon. Well, I'll tweet it if you want it, but nothing will happen. I want Kovacic United, our perfect signing, says Oliver Sandford. I'd probably take I'd take any of Chelsea's midfielders, Kante, Jovic, or Jorginho. Nice hoodie, says rest up, build up. Yeah, you can get them on Sneak. Just use the code SneakBridge. Sneak.com. They're out today. Actually, they're limited edition, so if you want to get one, you need to get it today. But please use the code SneakBridge. Mark, what is your creator tag? Ordering Sneak. SneakBridge, Alpha Gaming. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, just put SneakBridge, all one word. Cheers, mate. I will tweet Elon Musk after this, and then you can all retweet it for me. I'll say, please, Elon Musk, buy Manchester United, and then you can retweet it. In fact, let's do it while we're live. Please, at Elon Musk by Manchester United. If you know, you know. There you go. I've tweeted it. I'm going to get a load of abuse now on Twitter from people who don't watch the show going, look at this beg, look at this idiot. So you better defend me in the chat. Because there'll be a lot of people going, look at this wanker. He thinks it's that easy. But because they won't realise that it's part of a show. If you know, you know. Imagine if it worked. You'd be the legends that saved Manchester United. As years come, he will lose his only attribute, pace, says Hub. Rashford to PSG. I don't think Rashford will go to PSG. I don't think United would ever want to sell Marcus Rashford. If you think about Marcus Rashford, right? He's everything United love, right? He's from the youth setup. He's a striker, an attacker who scores goals. He's highly marketable, and he's a huge brand off the pitch. That is why they want to give Paul Pogba 400 grand a week, because he's hugely marketable off the pitch. United do not want to lose the Paul Pogbas, the Marcus Rashfords of this world, because what are United focused on? And I think you all know this, but sometimes people need reminding of it. What do Manchester United love? Interaction, brands, exposure. Do you think Man United really care about Paul Pogba's performance in a crappy 1-0 win where he's been average against Norwich? Or do you think they care about the fact that after the game, Adidas tweet about Paul Pogba wearing their new boots and tagging Man United? You know, for United, the board, it's about interaction, it's about exposure, it's about brands saying we want a bit of that. And that's why there's a new contract on the offer for Paul Pogba, and that's why they'll never let Marcus Rashford go. Now, I wouldn't let Marcus Rashford go, and you wouldn't let Marcus Rashford go for a completely different reason, because he's a decent footballer if we can get the best out of him. But United won't sell Marcus Rashford unless Marcus Rashford wants to go, and I wouldn't say that's impossible, and I wouldn't say people would really have an issue with it if he did, because he's good mates with Jesse Lingard. He might be pissed off with how the club's keeping him at the club when he wants to go. As I said, the relationship with some of the players and the Glazers isn't good, but they don't deal with the Glazers on a daily basis. They deal with the coaches who they do get on with. So Elon by United already working on the business plan, Mark. Let's pitch it together, says V. And no player can be consistent always. Come on, this is why I don't like media nowadays. You can't be bad for a month. 10 years ago, it was much different. Well, I think Don, Ollie, it's almost the FIFA generation, isn't it? And we do see it. When I'm doing the watch-alongs, if Bruno has a bad 45 minutes, he's shit and we need to sell him. You are right. I think people are far less understanding of the fact that if, before FIFA was popular, before the internet and Twitter was even existed, footballers were inconsistent. They were, I'm trying to think, Ryan Giggs didn't play well every week. He didn't. But if you don't play every week now, you're a flop, you're shit, let's sell them. And, there is a lot less patience now. I mean, look at Arsenal. They do quite well under Arteta, and they're building, Arsenal have finished 8th for the last 2 years and been a laughing stock. This year, they're in a race for 4th. They lose a game. Oh, get Arteta out. Arteta out. And you're like, yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? This is the problem. You are coming from a position where you are nowhere. You're now in a 4th place race, which no one ever thought you would be. You drop points and you've immediately put your standards up to you should be a top 4 club. Like, there's no patience in football. However, the world-class players don't have many off games. If they play 10 games and in 5 of them they're crap, that's too many if you want to be world-class. If you want to be world-class in 10 games, you've got to be playing good. I'm not saying great, but you've got to be playing good in 7 of them. If you're playing good in 5 of them, you're not world-class. So that's where I disagree with you. You can't expect any player to play good every game, but if you want to be world class, you've got to be playing good in a lot of the games. Yes. Giggs used to get a lot of abuse from the fans. Scott, you can tell what United fans used to go and watch United in the early noughties at Old Trafford, because I've said this so many times, and that's when I used to go quite a lot. The amount of games I was at Old Trafford where Ryan Giggs would be getting pouters, and I probably did it as well. And when I say pouters, I'd be standing, oh, Giggsy, pass the bloody ball, or something like that. Not, boo, get out of our club, because that's not how United fans in general do behave. But, I don't know how many of you have been to a match, but it always makes me laugh when people, come out with Oh, what are you saying McTominay had a bad game for? Why are you saying Bruno had a bad game? Oh, get behind the team, win, lose or draw. And I'm like, have you ever been to a football match in your life at Old Trafford? Because I'm telling you now, when there's a misplaced pass, there are jeers. If the same player does it 3 or 4 times, the jeers get bigger and bigger. Like, football fans express their opinion on performance. And I'm telling you now, Ryan Giggs was quite a frustrating player at times. And remember, he was at the club for about 40 years, so he didn't play well every game for 40 years. Ryan Giggs went through a few patches where you thought he's finished, actually. But he's a legend of the club. But yeah, if you used to go to Old Trafford in the early noughties, you'll know. If you know, you know. Like, there were games at Old Trafford where, you know, he'd try and run past the man again and lose the ball 3 or 4 times, and people would be, oh, Giggsy, fucking pass, yeah. And then he'd go and put a whip across in or score a good goal. Pogba, Ronaldo and his step-overs, Paul, as well, in the early days, used to get a lot of stick for that as well. Pogba, Cavani, Mata, Lingard out of contract, Bay, Marcel, Hendo, Van der Beek not happy, busy summer ahead with yet another underwhelming window for us, as Bradders. Yeah, in relation to the summer transfer window, I'm not expecting miracles, because we can't do 8 deals in a summer, and every deal is an in or out. If someone goes, that's a deal. If you're negotiating Henderson goes, that's 1 deal. If you've got to negotiate Martial to go, that's 2. If you've got to negotiate Bay to go, that's 3. If you've got to negotiate for Donny to go, that's 4. That only leaves you 4 more, and that's if United have a good summer. Sometimes we can only get 6 done. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. And you know what? Lewis says it's the same now, Mark, at Old Trafford. I don't disagree. I mean, I don't get there as much as I would like anymore. But you know, I think back to the worst one I was at was just before Christmas. About 3 weeks before Mourinho got sacked, we drew 0-0 at Crystal Palace. 0-0 at home to Crystal Palace. It was absolutely horrible. And I was sat, you know, most of the time when I go to Old Trafford, I sit all around Old Trafford because it's where you can get a ticket. And we were sat on the lower tier, diagonally opposite the where the players walk out. And there was a lot of older fans there. You know, I would say season ticket holders who'd been there for years and years and years. And all around the stands, there was people really fed up. It was coming towards the Mourinho era and coming towards the end of the Mourinho era. And there was a lot of unrest. But a lot of the people I was sat around were like, I would say most of them were in their 50s, 60s. And, you know, they just weren't the sort of people that were going to be, you know, they've seen it all before sort of thing. A lot of them were getting up and leaving. A lot of them were like, I've had enough of this. So, you know, and the whole ground was just very, 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 very impatient. So I'm sure it happens now. Especially, I mean, I never really got to go towards the end of the Ollie reign because a lot of it was in COVID, and then this season I've not been. But yeah, I've got no doubt. It's one of the things that always confuses me is how when you're on social media with these fans who go to the games, and then they're criticising you for criticising the manager or players on social media and saying, well, you're always being negative. Yeah, I guarantee when they're at Old Trafford and we're playing badly, a lot of the crowd are not happy. So there's nothing wrong with being unhappy with players or the manager of Manchester United over the last 10 years or the board, because we're nowhere near where we should be, so someone's got to take responsibility. They will no doubt drag a manager out for a few months, then have to deal with the outgoings and maybe bring in 1 or 2, says Seb. Well, look, Seb, it's Friday night, we're going into the weekend, and I don't want to ruin it for you because, you know, at the end of the day, life's for living and the weekend is here. But I can only be honest with you, I've got no trust in this board, and unfortunately the board will dictate what happens to this club over the next 5 years like it's dictated what happens to this club over the last 10. I look at clubs like Aston Villa and I see progression and good recruitment and a good manager. I look at Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool and I think they're too far ahead, so that's top 3 gone. If Villa come through, Spurs have got a better manager than us. I think Conte is better than Rangnick, and if they start giving him the players, they will come through. Arsenal, I just don't know. I'm not going to include them, but Spurs and Villa have got the potential to go past us. Everton and Leicester have got money. Like, they have got money. Leicester have had a weird season. If Everton get the right manager, you know, I don't think it's inconceivable that we could be fighting for 5th, 6th, 7th next year. I think teams like Villa have got more momentum than us at the moment. Obviously, we're Manchester United. We're a much bigger club than Villa. We've got much better players than Villa. But it's not always about how good your players are. It's about chemistry. It's about personality. And it's about camaraderie or, togetherness. And I don't think we have that. Especially when you haven't got a bloody midfield. Royal Rumble watch along mark, says Lee Taylor. I think I'll be too busy watching the NFL, to be honest. So I don't think so, Lee, to be honest with you. And also, we've got bloody transfer deadline day on Monday, so I don't want to be knackered for that. Big day on Monday. Although we'll probably be talking about rivals doing transfer rather than ourselves. Right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Really enjoy the Friday night show because it's a bit of a Q&A. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. And remember, Ultimate Fan, it's not working this weekend because there's no games. But if you want to download it, it's free. You've got to be over 18. Next weekend, it will be back. You'll still get your free packs this time when you download it anyway. And £8,500 cash prize pool will be there next week. So you can download it. Must be over 18. Terms and conditions are in the chat. Thank you very much for that. And if you want to get one of these, I've completely forgotten because I've just kept it on since my Twitch stream. This is the new Sneak hoodie. They've just dropped the Blizzard collection, and they are limited edition. So if you want to get one, just go to sneak.com and please use the code SNEAKBRIDGE because they'll know that you've come from me there. So that would be great. Shout out from Canada, Mark. We beat Honduras last night, says Mr. 1972. Yeah, I don't mind Canada, but when people say Canada, I just think about FIFA coders, and I tell you what, they screwed me over today. So if you know any, tell them to sort it out. I lost to Everton because of Canadian coders. Like, I got fouled on the edge of the box. They stopped the play and went back and gave it 30 yards away. Bullshit. Anyway, big up for Canada. It's not your fault. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Much love to everyone, and I will speak to you all in a bit. Thanks for watching. Back in the morning for the morning show.